My life took a dramatic turn when I discovered my wife Addie had been in a terrible accident. As she fought for her life, secrets started to unravel. Rob, Addie's secret lover, sneaks into the hospital at night, leading to a tense confrontation with me. The stakes get higher as I overhear their conversations, revealing the depth of their affair. I dig deeper and uncover even more shocking truths about Addie's secret life. With Addie struggling to walk again and me facing the ultimate betrayal, will our love survive? Stay tuned to find out. Combat alert. I got a call at work that my wife was in a terrible accident. I told my coworkers I was going to the hospital. They were good people and would help however they could. I promised to call from the hospital. I hoped my fears were unfounded. The hospital looked like a typical place, making the wait for news feel even longer. I hoped it was really my wife, Addie, they had admitted. A nurse and a young doctor approached me. Unfortunately, their patient was my Addie. She had bruises and internal injuries, but no internal bleeding. Her legs were badly broken. They said she would walk again, but it would take a long time. The nurse kindly asked if Addie was an athlete because she had very strong legs. I thought they were even trained to talk this way to families. She mentioned that the scars would be significant but could be fixed later. However, the shape and tone of her muscles would be affected. I told the nurse that Addie used to be a professional dancer and still exercised regularly. The nurse nodded and said that made sense. If everything went well, Addie could handle the rehab since she was used to tough training. However, she might be very upset about the scars and muscle loss. I would need to support her emotionally and reassure her that we could improve her skin and muscle tone with rehab, but she might not be as strong as before. The nurse gave me a task to focus on, which helped calm my fears and prepared me to care for my wife. She was skilled in dealing with people, making me feel there was hope for the future. They told me the car's airbag had deployed, protecting Addie from other injuries. But she was in a coma with brain swelling. They had to remove a small part of her skull to relieve the pressure. If the swelling went down quickly, they could put the piece back. If not, they would use a plate later. They seemed calm about the procedure, but the swelling was worrying. It was a tough situation. They assured me they were very good at their jobs and doing everything they could, though not all cases ended well. I was devastated and begged them to take my vital organs if it would save Addie. They reassured me they were doing their best and left me to think for a while. Later, the nurse came back and said she saw many families every day and could tell I loved my wife deeply. I told her I was serious about trading my life for Addie's and would sign any paperwork. She smiled, put her hand on mine, and said that wasn't how things worked, but appreciated my sentiment. I called my family and told them the news, asking them to inform others. I called one of Addie's best friends, Carol, and told her everything, asking her to spread the word. Carol asked if Addie was alone during the accident and where it happened. She seemed very concerned about the details. I told her Addie was in a coma and might die, wondering why these details mattered. The police arrived and asked similar questions, like whether Addie usually drove the route where the accident happened. I didn't know what to think about Carol's questions. I told the police what I knew, trying to be helpful. One officer asked if Addie should have been alone. I said yes and no, as she had no appointments but might have been with a friend. They asked where she was going, and I suggested she might have been trying a new lunch spot or cafe, though it made my stomach churn. The police shared their findings. Addie wasn't paying attention and drove through an intersection, ending up under a truck. Her legs were broken when the car's front collapsed, and her forehead hit the airbag, causing her brain injury. They confirmed Addie was alone in the car, which gave me some relief. They said the accident happened on Highway 8. Before, I only knew the part of town where the accident happened, not Route 8. It was on the other side of town, a place we didn't usually go. There was no easy access to cafes or shops from Route 8, just apartments and houses. The police saw my confusion. I told them I had no idea why she was there. They suggested maybe she was picking up a friend. I said I would ask one of my wife's friends, especially Carol, who had been asking about Eddie's location. I wanted to know if this place meant anything to her. When Carol arrived at the hospital, I asked her right away. She turned pale. "What's going on, Carol? I need you to tell me the truth," I insisted. She responded like a scene from a crime movie. "I'll tell you, Jim, I promise, but not here. You have to understand I'm not your enemy. I'm your ally. I'm trying to take care of you, not her right now. Eddie has an army to help her. You need someone to take care of you." I wasn't sure what to think. Carol stayed quiet, not mysterious. Carol. I believed what the doctor told me, that Addie should recover except maybe her legs. They might lose their beauty, but not their function. Plastic surgeons could make them look better, but not like before. That didn't matter. I would stay with her. I loved her. I couldn't help but sigh at the accidental irony. Yeah, if only Addie could be like she used to be. "Yes, just like before," Carol added thoughtlessly. A few nights later, I was in Eddie's room, sleeping in a different bed in case she woke up. The nurses often covered me with a curtain when they worked with my wife. Maybe cleaning the lines and catheters seemed cruel and insensitive in front of her husband. Maybe they didn't want to wake me. In any case, I would wake up and find the curtain closed. Late one night, after the nurses had finished their work, a man entered the room. There were male nurses and orderlies, so it wasn't unusual. I didn't show that I was awake, not wanting to scare or embarrass someone just doing their job. This man didn't notice me at all. That's how I realized something was wrong. He stopped at Eddie's bed, looked at her for a long time, then apologized to her even though she was in a coma. He said with tears in his eyes that it was all his fault because she was coming to him. He began to cry openly. Everyone was wondering why she was where the accident happened. Now I had a terrible answer. I prayed the situation would change. I felt like I was in a falling plane, begging with all my might for it to rise. The man kept talking, crying more and more. He said he didn't want to hurt Eddie's family and didn't know who to talk to because he didn't know who knew what. He said he was keeping away to avoid causing trouble. Then he mentioned the night nurses. They might not know what her husband looked like. He decided to come at night, then leave early for work. He was sorry it took him so long. It hurt him to be away, and he was sure it hurt Eddie too. But the plan worked, and the nurses let him in that night. "Maybe they think I'm Jim. I'll only come at night, Eddie. I don't want to hurt you more than I already have. But I'll never leave you, Eddie. I know you love me," he said, bursting into tears. This last remark seemed heartfelt. Everything he said, about not wanting to hurt her family or cause embarrassment, sounded like a man in pain. Finally, he said, "You know I love you too, but I'll only come at night." I saw him kneeling, his hands on the bed, touching my wife's motionless hand. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned and saw me standing behind him. Even in the dark, I saw his eyes widen in fear. I left my hand on his shoulder as a sign of reassurance. But when he tried to get up, I held him in place. I wanted to make sure we understood each other before any punches flew. I quietly told him, "It'll be crowded here, even at night." He tried to get up. I let him lift a few inches before pressing him down again. He tried to rise against me, and I said, "Too tight, just like my marriage for the last year." His knees buckled. I was surprised he showed up. It said something good about him. What should a husband say about a lover? That he's glad the guy cares about more than just his wife's body? That he wants all of her? My concern was with my wife, not him. I'm not one to tolerate cheating, and I'm not small. I'm sure everyone would assume I'd kill him if there was another guy. I realized this guy was here, but I was afraid of the 1% chance my wife loved him. That's why I didn't kill him. Not yet. To do it prematurely would mean Eddie would never come back to me. My wife didn't know I knew. But Rob, his name was Rob, now knew exactly what I knew. I wasn't sure how it would end. I had a plan, but the accident made serious adjustments, and her romance seemed unimportant. Only Eddie and her survival mattered. This other situation faded into the background. Now I had to deal with her and Rob. Call me a fool, but Eddie is my heart. She doesn't just own it. She is my heart. Was I ready to forgive this? Yes. If we put this behind us, with Eddie leaving the affair and Rob behind, I was willing to move on. The affair had plenty of time to end, but it didn't. So it was time for me to step in. But the accident changed everything. I made a quick decision. A fight in a hospital room would only be appropriate in a James Bond movie, but not when my wife is between life and death. I wanted to know more about this man. His coming here, what he said, made me realize the affair had more depth than I thought. I forced my face to show that I wasn't a threat, at least not immediately. I increased his anxiety. "Come to the other side of the room and talk to me, Rob." He turned pale, realizing I knew more about him than he thought. We talked. It was unique. Once he knew I wasn't going to hurt him, it was both enlightening and heartbreaking. Rob came back 2 more times in the next 4 nights. We talked. He didn't want to like me, but he respected me. As his respect grew, he started looking at me with something that made my blood run cold. Pity. I never imagined losing to him. I didn't allow myself to think that way. But now the possibility arose, although it was still remote compared to the possibility that my dear Addie might die. We were both surprised, but encouraged, that the other person actually cared about Eddie. I was not an abuser, and he was not a player. He knew I hated the fact of his existence, if not him. If we faced each other, it would be a short encounter, both physically and emotionally. I had the advantage in everything, and it was obvious to both of us. But still, he looked at me with pity. He knew how much I loved my wife. He said it was obvious to everyone, even in how the nurses briefed me. I said, "Nurse, it's ironic that Rob is Eddie's brother, so they let him stay?" Yes, it seemed like I had it all figured out. So why was this guy sleeping with my wife? Let me back up to answer the obvious question. I am successful. I have succeeded where others have failed. I am capable and well-built. So why didn't I kill Rob? A few reasons. I didn't want to go to jail. I wanted to be near Eddie. I wanted to protect her when she couldn't protect herself. I heard Rob say he loved her. Normally, this would be reason enough to ensure no one ever heard from him again. But Eddie was in a coma, between life and death. It didn't seem like the right time for violence. Besides, Eddie's condition left me mentally exhausted, and I was in no condition to commit murder. And maybe, just maybe, Rob's voice could help Eddie get her life back when mine couldn't. I had a new plan. I needed information. I invited this guy to Eddie's hospital room during the day when friends and family were there. He appreciated that I introduced him as Eddie's friend from work. When I mentioned Rob's name, Eddie's mother made a strange face, like she was trying to remember something. She became very suspicious of Rob. It was clear she didn't know about their affair. I put on this show to see who knew as I introduced Rob. I noticed a few faces made surprised expressions. "This is Rob. He's Eddie's friend from work. Does anyone here know him?" That was my performance. I looked at him with a face that made him gulp. "I think it's best if you treat him like family." Positive identification from 2 women with their mouths open. Maybe 2 more, but not sure. I would talk to those I trusted today. Their reactions were different enough to notice. One seemed stunned by Rob's boldness. The other, Carol, tried to kill him with her gaze. 3 of us went to lunch. We took turns doing it. I left the crowd in Eddie's room, including Rob. If he felt guilty there, great. He deserved it. If he really loved her, as he said, at least he was with her in the light of day. I quietly told the 2 women whose reactions I had noticed that I wanted to have lunch with them alone. I am a large, tall man with what many call a commanding presence, and people look to me for reassurance and leadership. I never abuse this gift and try not to let people down. I may have been given this gift, but I worked hard to live up to it. My decisions now concerned my own wife. No one questioned my actions in the current emergency, nor did the women when I told them they were going to lunch with me. They knew it was connected with my wife, but nothing else about the lunch. Both women looked at me with wide eyes as I led them to my car. We sat in a quiet corner of the diner. I didn't waste time. As soon as we sat down, I asked, "Why did you support Rob in his affair with my wife? Why did you support the destruction of my marriage?" They sat with their mouths open. Carol soon lowered her head, seething with anger. I was shocked that Carol was involved. She seemed like an honest person. I continued, "I'm going to get her back completely. Then I'll deal with him. I can't stand Addie having an affair. Now that Rob actually has feelings for her, it's even worse. I want a future with her because I never stopped loving her. I hope you support this." By letting them know I knew about the affair and their involvement, I hoped to get honest information from them. They looked at me, and Carol spoke with emotion in her voice. "Jim, I never wanted to take sides. I was hard on Eddie because of Rob. But you should know now that everything's out in the open. It's not just physical, it's more than that. How can you even describe an affair?" I wanted to say it didn't matter, but that's not fair. Some people go their whole lives and never find a good person. But Addie found 2. Disgust and anger filled my response. I agree it's unfair, especially since I was first, and Addie promised me she was off the market. She shouldn't have been looking for another good guy. Carol's voice showed pain. Addie wasn't looking, and, Jim, you weren't the first. Rob has known her since college. I tried to stay calm. It was shocking to learn Addie had known Rob longer than she knew me. She never mentioned him. Were they dating then? I asked. They weren't in love, Jim, but they were good friends. On-again, off-again friends. When you came into her life, Rob was already there. When you wrapped your protection around Addie, he was already inside. Years later, that fact allowed their relationship to develop again. Addie was honest about him moving here, working together, his parents' death, everything. So her colleague who lost family wasn't a woman, though she made it seem that way, I concluded. Jim, Addie tried to do right by you. When she failed, she wanted to tell you about her close friend. I told her she needed to. When she started having feelings for him and didn't tell you, you did everything for her, and were wonderful to her family and friends. She felt she couldn't hurt you. The worst thing is, if she had told you about his problems, you would have accepted him and helped. Their relationship would never have grown in secret. I took a deep breath, looking at their sad faces. Love? No, not from her. Carol looked at me with sympathy, but also anger. Jim, their relationship stayed secret almost by accident because they were ex-lovers. If people at work knew, it would have been awkward. The secrecy allowed their feelings to grow in the dark. Love can grow stronger because it's forbidden. My face showed bitterness. Obviously, something else was affecting him. Surprised? Carol asked quietly. You would forgive her even for that, wouldn't you? Why not answer them? They asked. They knew about my humiliation before I did. Some people say their partner is their better half. I truly believe Addie is my better half. She's a part of me. Leaving her would be like an amputation. Trying to cut her out of me would probably kill me. Losing her when she deceived me also offends my sense of justice. But if she sees herself as the worse half, removing her would be like removing the bad part. Carol was outraged. This is outrageous. You are a good person. She did bad things. I looked into Carol's eyes. Wouldn't love be wonderful if I still protect her even when she does something bad? Carol was indignant. Even if it hurts you, she's doing bad things against you. Yes, as long as she doesn't kill me, I said, raising my palms. This is the definition. I can forgive an affair, but not abandonment. I looked miserable. Why hide it? So I told them where my protection of my wife ended. I believe love should be defended to the last resort, going down with the ship. You can save yourself, but love is a rare gift. It's a blessing, not a commodity. The world would be better if people understood this. The women looked at me differently. Carol felt strongly, and the other woman, who might have been having an affair at work, was changing her devotion. I took another deep breath. They looked at me, wondering what it meant. If it comes to it, let it go. I can't believe I brought him in and made him acceptable to everyone, and she loves him in return. I thought all the deep feelings were on his part, that he was just an ego trip for her. Of course, she had affection for him, otherwise she wouldn't. I left my sentence unfinished. I still find it hard to believe she had an affair. My duty is to protect my wife. I have to give her the chance to fix this. I love her, so it's doubly important, but I can't accept it. It's so hard to believe. I never thought of this. If I realized she had deep feelings for him, I would have taken him to the quarry and made him leave the city so she would understand it was wrong and stop. I didn't want her to get away with it and never face it again. I wanted her medicine to be a vaccine against the behavior happening again. I let the wound fester. I let the infection grow. I was miserable. I thought I was serving love, but it seemed like I was playing games with it. Still, I had faith in my wife and best friend, even when she betrayed me. This was an example in itself. I tried to downplay her time with Rob before the affair and before the betrayal. My love blinded me. If I served love poorly, it didn't help me much either. Carol looked at me with big, almost surprised eyes. They were silent until I added, "But she has to stop doing bad things. I won't stand for my humiliation. This is the worst thing a wife can do." Now the women looked almost desperate. They supported Eddie and me even though they knew it might not work out. It seemed like I needed to speak again. Everything seemed to fall on me. Okay, don't worry. I'll take care of her. We don't have to worry until she gets better. Eddie will understand that no one, not even him, can love her like I do. Maybe he's a good guy, but he didn't try to do the right thing. I try my best to do the right thing for Eddie. However, he wants to steal a married woman. It's bad, and it makes him bad. He should know that if he wasn't special to my wife, I would have sent him to the bottom of the harbor long ago. Carol commented, I think he knows that. This is the most confusing situation I've ever been in. Jim, remember this. I don't know what's going to happen, but you have to win. There shouldn't be any competition. But if it's about what's best for Eddie, who loves her more, who's the better man, then you have to win. But Jim, there's the friendship and the past they have together. If you want her now, especially now, then it should be you two riding off into the sunset together. I lowered my head. I worked and lived with the assumption that our future was secure. I keep my promises. I promised Eddie my everything until I died. She might stumble, but she can still count on me. That's the point of marriage, right? When one is not strong, the other helps. She fell, and now she can't walk. I'll carry her if necessary. The women tried to hide it, but they were on the verge of despair. I was going to lose. It was ridiculous. My beloved Eddie was hanging between life and death. This is where my focus should be. But if my love was not the force that could save her, then I needed to reconsider my plans. I needed to find something more powerful. What should I do? I was never going to give up on Eddie. The only person who could make me stop was Eddie herself. Since she was currently unable to decide, I had to continue as I always had. Eddie needed me. I would fight or die trying. I suddenly stopped, almost causing the two women to collide with my back. Wait, let's look at this differently. My brain was swimming. A new idea was taking shape. Maybe this is it. It was grim, but it was an opportunity. I didn't hesitate. I was all in. My prayers were answered. It took a while, but my Eddie came out of her coma. She was weak, but she seemed whole. Everything that was Eddie's essence was there. Everything that was weak and damaged could be restored. I was extremely grateful for this. Months later, we became a universe of two with occasional visits from friends and family. I tried not to overwhelm her, doing everything I could for her without crossing the line. The poor woman couldn't walk, couldn't roll over at first, and had trouble speaking, but that improved, though she was still out of breath from talking for too long. I took care of her and looked after her. Even cleaning her was a joy compared to not having her. I would take this deal every hour of every day for the rest of my life and consider it the best deal ever. I made sure she could quickly find me in any room if I wasn't nearby. Addie felt comforted by my efforts. She told me she needed me. Only one thing could make me happier. I was thrilled to see Addie getting stronger each week. The rehabilitation was tough. Addie fell several times, but I always managed to catch her. There was a nervous tension waiting for something to go wrong. She needed to do everything herself, but I was prepared to make sure she didn't get hurt during her struggle. Being so attentive without being intrusive was tiring. I slept well at night from emotional exhaustion. God bless Eddie. She noticed it. She was in pain, trapped in a body that had once been a tool she wielded with ease but was now much like a prison cell. However, she accepted the challenge. She looked at me and thanked me for what I did for her, saying she couldn't do it without me, and with tears in her eyes, that she never wanted to disappoint me. After a while, she began to make progress. Almost every day, she started to enjoy trips to the rehab center. We got to know everyone there. Addie tried to rebuild her muscles and regain her movement. Soon, it was time to use what she had recovered. She tried to support her weight by holding onto the handrails in the narrow passage. If her legs couldn't handle it, she had to use her arms and shoulders. Addie noticed I was standing where I always stood. Just out of her peripheral vision, a little behind her, I was ready to catch her but stayed out of sight so as not to distract her. She looked over her shoulder at me, still holding the handrails. Jim, I want to try to walk, not just get my legs to work. I'm not sure I'm ready, but I want to try. I need something to get through the pain. I need you where I can see you and be inspired by you. I need something worthwhile to break through the fear and pain. I need my final destination. Will you do this for me? I hesitated, afraid she might fall, but I couldn't deny her this desire. This was what we had been working towards. I was amazed that I meant so much to her, despite what had happened before the accident. We hadn't talked much about it, focusing on Eddie's rehab instead. It was a big moment for me, realizing she saw me as her ultimate goal. Addie looked at me as I took my place at the end of the aisle. I smiled, and she melted a little, her head tilting, a blush spreading across her cheeks. Then she became very focused. She nodded, holding onto the railings tightly. She took a step, groaning in pain, then another step, her eyes never leaving mine. Addie almost fell, bending over as she moved her other leg. She was obviously in a lot of pain, her eyes closed, but she calmed down when she saw me. She gritted her teeth, pushed herself up with her legs, and stood up again, letting out a muffled moan. She gave a weak smile, the kind that comes from deep inside. One step, then another. Tears streamed down her cheeks, glowing red with triumph. Her groans turned into my name. Addie stood trembling with tension, smiling. She waited until she saw my proud face, and then her pain seemed to disappear. She threw her arms around my neck, laughing so sincerely it warmed my soul. Addie directed me to lie on the floor with her, never letting go of my neck. "I love you. I love you. You never gave up on me. You love me so much." All I could say was, "You walked again, Eddie." She placed one hand on my cheek, the other around my neck, pulling me closer. "I probably don't deserve it, but thanks to you, I'm walking again. I wanted to give this to you as a tribute. You admire what I do well, but I simplify everything to keep things in front of me. I never see that I'm losing sight. Yes, I achieve the goal, but I never keep track of how much it costs. I'm afraid of how many victories might be Pyrrhic in this case. To walk again, I had to overcome the pain. I wanted to walk to honor you, which cost me more than avoiding pain. Your help is completely different. You took the pain because you love me and refused to let me down when I failed you. Your love inspires me. You want me to be better. Whatever it is, you don't hate me or leave. You did all this for me. I wanted you to see what you mean to me. Jim, I hope this doesn't cloud what I've already said. I swear it's true. I've always loved you, even when I'm so sorry." Addie hugged me tightly, and I didn't pull away. Her sobs changed, and I couldn't tell if she was happy, in pain, or upset. I couldn't read her emotions. This was the first time we touched on this terrible topic in such depth. I looked around the room at the rehab specialists and staff, glowing with Eddie's triumph and our obvious happiness. I didn't want to ruin their excitement or this joyful moment, so I decided to leave it for later. Instead, I enjoyed watching Addie take her first new steps toward me, just like I remembered her walking down the aisle to become my bride. We were driving home after her first walk when she spoke in a quiet, firm voice that caught my attention. "We haven't discussed this yet." "Not directly. I tried. You always talked me out of it, saying I needed to focus on getting better. You always know better, but it didn't seem fair. Jim, my body is healing. It needs to get stronger and remember what it can do in my mind. This was the last major barrier. I know I still have a long way to go, but I feel like I'll definitely get there now. So it seems I need to turn my attention to what I wish I had all along. Back to us. Can I start now, Jim?" I nodded, not knowing what else to say. Addie continued, "Remember when I woke up in the hospital? Maybe not the first time, but the first time I was clear from the fog. I could move. My thoughts were confused, and I thought of you first. I think that's okay, but I'm not sure." "Why do you say that?" Eddie's expression was determined. "I was scared. I was hurt, compromised, and scared. You were always my knight. I was in trouble, and I needed you. If I was in trouble, when I saw you, I was so happy. Of course I was in trouble. But when I saw you, I knew that no matter how bad it was, it would be as good as it could be because you would make it like that. You always protect me. I think I'm too good at taking from you. And what I saw soon after only confirmed this in another, more subtle way. You protect me well, and I take well from you," she said. I was shocked to see Rob. I was amazed. Then I had to remember why. It was an ominous feeling. I don't think about Rob consciously. Isn't that strange? I took this as a sign that her affection for him wasn't true love. It was just always there, like background noise. I took this as a good sign too, as Eddie was always on my mind. Then I looked at you again and it all came flooding back. I felt really lousy, small, even cheap. I was definitely ashamed. I felt a wave of unworthiness that I'd never felt before with such intensity. Everyone knew something was wrong, Eddie. You threw up. She looked at me suspiciously. Jim, about Rob. I didn't want to, but I felt myself lower my head. I caught it quickly. Did I make it clear? I think this day had to come sooner or later, but why couldn't I enjoy this one day of triumph without thinking about that long-forgotten, never-defeated scoundrel? Jim, Rob, and I were lovers back in college. The last 3 words were added hastily. I glanced at her just in time to see her face turn towards the side window. I caught a glimpse of her broken expression reflected in the glass. You should have known that. I should have told you about him a long time ago. He shouldn't have been in the hospital. I'm sorry. I tried to tell you many times. My husband should know my past. And then it became real. Each time I put off the story. Because how could I explain my failure without telling you until now? With each new step I wanted to tell you, except each last step seemed so terribly accusatory. You're not following me. I missed the next step. Damn, Jim, I really screwed up. Was this the moment she decided to be honest? Do I want this now? Her eyes were wild. She was scared to death. Addie turned to me. Jim, I love you. I'm afraid of losing you. I can't imagine life without you. But I did something terrible. The words flew out of her as if from a tortured soul. She knew she couldn't stop there. She deliberately painted herself into a corner. She didn't want to chicken out. She studied every feature of my face. Jim, you deserve only the best. You are the best, and I don't deserve you. The answer was sincere. Eddie, there is nothing in this world that I want more than you. Never say that again. I wasn't strict with her often. I couldn't restrain myself this time. Her eyes were wide open, listening to my sincerity. She leaned over and grabbed my arm, pressing her face against my shoulder as I drove. I should have told you. I actually misled you. Remember my coworker who lost his family? Well, that coworker wasn't a woman. It was Rob. Those dinners to support the bereaved were real, but they were with Rob. I should have told you dozens of times, maybe hundreds. But every time I was afraid of hurting you, knowing I was spending time with Rob. His parents died in the accident. His father was driving her home from dialysis when it happened. I don't know what he told you, but he shouldn't have been in the hospital. His actions weren't always honorable. She quickly added, He's not a bad man, Jim, but he's not a man like you. Eddie looked into my eyes for a long time. You have more discipline than any man I've ever met. You really think about what you have to do. Once you choose a path, you take all the wounds and blows. It dictates never deviating for your own comfort or safety. When troubles happen along the way, you take the brunt of it, knowing that you can handle it. And you always achieve victory time after time. You share it generously, allowing others to enjoy the triumph and illumination which you yourself are not looking for, striving only for a successful result for everyone. Eddie seemed to be searching for words. Jim, Rob is more like an ordinary person. He is flesh and blood and has difficulty controlling his passions. I have never known a man more passionate than you, but you always remain in control for the rest of us. It's hard. You're like the driver who has the fastest time on the track. He was so smooth that you almost didn't notice how fast he was going around the corners and overdoing it when they made the wrong line. The car lurching from side to side. The tires squeal. They seem to be going very fast, but their times are no match for a driver who does it easily. I know it's not always easy for you, but you make it look like it, instilling great confidence in others. But we rely on you too often, pushing things to the limit. Eddie sighed heavily. I just want to say that I appreciate you. You've always let me see behind the curtain, but sometimes even I act like a normal person and take you for granted, relying on you and your strength more than I should. I know that you would spend every ounce of your strength to satisfy or protect me. I will never meet another man like you. Compared to you, Rob is drowning in imperfection. He seems relaxed and undisciplined. This is not true. Compared to you, most men, Rob stands out and stands tall, but he will always live in your shadow. And this is not fair for him or for you. It is the strength of your nature. I still didn't know what to say to such comments. I remained silent, hoping Eddie would talk about her relationship with Rob, hoping that was in the past, and that she had learned her lesson to never go near such a flame again. I wanted to know where I stood with her. Flattering words did not tell me what I wanted to know. Eddie was very serious and tried to hold back her emotions. Jim, you navigate a minefield and create a clear path for those who follow you. taking extra precautions to protect those you love, never letting others see how hurt you are. By doing this, you hide your suffering and how deeply their mistakes hurt you. You bear the pain for them and always do the right thing for them. Even when they don't do the right thing for you, you love and believe in them even when you're hurt. You do it as if it's easy, which puts you at risk again. Eddie's tears increased. Her hands shook. Her voice was tense. I'm trying to thank you for choosing me, for protecting me, and mostly for loving me. I want to ask for your forgiveness for my weakness. Can you forgive me? I said, I can, not that I will. We haven't gotten to that point yet, baby. I can forgive you for almost anything. Eddie smiled through a playful laugh. I thought your love for me had no limits. Her confession, or whatever she could bear for now, was over. Eddie playfully asked, What are these things you can't forgive me for? Killing me or us? I replied matter-of-factly. She turned pale. Addie really looked scared. It's one thing to tell your husband who adores you that you had a lover before you met him. It's quite another to tell him that you took a lover after marriage. I smiled as I explained softly. If any of this happens, I'll already be dead, so I simply won't be able to do anything, including forgiving. You'll have to live with my blood on your hands. But if you're honest and loyal, there's little we can't overcome. If this is behind you, I smiled, trying to add some humor, but she knew it was true. Honestly, sincerely, and deadly true. We arrived at our house. I took my time to give her time to compose herself as I walked around the car to help her out. I sent a signal I would be hurt, but she could tell me about her recent affair when she was ready. This could be forgiven then. Only one person can grant forgiveness, and only one person can earn it. But it often takes two. Addie was exhausted, her first walk in almost a year, and a partial confession took all her strength. It was easier for me to just take her out of the car and carry her inside. I smiled and beamed. Addie quickly removed her protective barriers and let go of her anxiety, joining my joy. I reminded her as we walked inside that her cheerful trainers, who had stepped aside to give us some time, had said that with the dedication she had shown and the energy it took to get to this point, she was sure to have the best possible rehabilitation, restoring all movements that are possible. They assured that with use and exercise, strength would not be a problem. I beamed at Eddie and her bottom lip trembled in response. My joy seemed to be contagious as she wrapped her arms around my neck and loudly proclaimed that she loved me again, safe in her home, exhausted from the exertion, the pain she had overcome, the triumph of her achievement, and perhaps in no small part from the release of her pent-up feelings of guilt and love. Addie fell asleep. I watched her sleep peacefully on the couch for a few minutes, thanking God for her return before I carried her upstairs to bed. A couple of hours passed before Addie came back to life. She saw that she was still in her gym clothes with a light blanket over her. She smiled and asked, "Did you want to take advantage of me?" She was beaming again. "To be honest, I didn't want to wake you up, but I'll gladly do it for you," I replied playfully. "Can I hold on to your neck? I think I could stand like this and you could take a shower with me." Then she became shy. "Or maybe I don't want it," she said thoughtfully. Then she winced. Her eyes widened and she quickly added with a feeling of guilt, "Not yet." Her bottom lip curled up against her teeth to match her guilty, scared eyes. "Oh, Jim, I was just afraid you'd see my scars and deformities. Maybe I'm not attractive to you anymore." I told her softly, "Eddie, I saw all this, even when you still had pins and stitches." She blushed deeply. "Yeah, but I don't think you've seen more than a quarter of me at one time since the accident. To be honest, I haven't worked up the courage to look at myself. It's okay if you don't want to shower with me. I would have held on to you and you would have been in an even worse situation. And you must be tired. After everything you did for me today in therapy, then carrying me here. I don't remember how we left the car." She beamed at me again. "But whenever you see fit, I'll be waiting for you to undress me." I hesitated before answering. "Baby, please. You had a great day. I know because I've dealt with your temporary body condition and scars that this was real progress. You're in much better shape than you were, but I'm afraid that you will be afraid if you see it. And this is not the course to follow now. All the worst-looking things are already fading away. They are shadows of what was and will soon be. shadows of what is now, what you did today, and use that energy to move forward. Addie shook her head, not realizing she had made the motion. Wow, you are something. This shower may not be the pleasure I wanted to give you, but I would love to be vertical and stand under the water with you pressed tightly against me. We exchanged genuine, warm smiles. We took a shower. I know it was painful for Addie, but she was all joy and light. The carefree laugh I heard from her at our clumsiness was a huge reward. She was my beloved wife. Addie is back. I thank the Almighty that she was not lost. Addie became very serious as she pushed her fingers through my hair. Looking into my eyes, she said, I can't understand you, your love and devotion. She turned pale as she said, I don't deserve this. It's a fact we both know all too well. I need you in so many ways. Dry us or leave us wet, but please put me on the bed and join me. Baby, I'm not sure your thighs can handle my weight much longer. One of them has been rebuilt. I'm a big man. She nodded but never looked away. Please, please, Jim, I need it and you need it. You've been deprived of too much in too many ways. For a long time, I didn't think missionary was an option because of my weight. I knew going on my knees wouldn't work. I dried Addie off and kissed her as she sobbed softly. I carried her to the edge of the bed and laid her there. From the way Addie used the word love, I knew she wasn't talking about our physical union. I told her, I will always love you. This is who I am. There was a strange urgency in her words, although she seemed completely sincere. I want to be everything to you, everything you want me to be, even now. How long has it been with you? And you're holding back so as not to hurt me. How? How can you love me so much? Care about me so much? At the end were the unspoken words, after what I did. This is going to sound weird. I'm not sure Addie knew she was actually saying those words out loud. Strange. But that's exactly what I thought. Then she said the strangest thing. Please, God, let me get pregnant, please. I thought about her request. It sounded strange, but what kind of man would be upset about his wife fervently asking God to let her have his child? I slept not yet peacefully, but more contentedly than I had slept in months. When I woke up the next morning, I heard her disappointment. I stayed where I was until I had to go to the bathroom. She rarely prayed out loud for my child, but when she thought her days were auspicious, she tried to get pregnant with my child. This brings up another point. After the accident and surgeries, Addie's periods became less frequent and less regular. Her body seemed to have lost its energy to repair itself, taking it from other places as if copying itself. Why did it occur to me to complain? I was a happy man. My wife was back. We lived in a universe of two. Her family and friends saw the way she looked at me, smiled, patted me on the arm or back, and hugged me as I walked them down the stairs at the end of their visit. There was a serious problem in our marriage. Most men would have left. The situation was made worse by her accident. But I stayed, and through my devotion prevailed. My father-in-law told me in front of his wife, a man accepts all this work after being betrayed, knowing that all he can get back is a scarred and damaged version of the woman who betrayed him. He is wonderful. I love my daughter, but I've never been prouder than I was of my son. He was talking about me. I was deeply touched by this compliment. My mother-in-law hugged me fiercely. I still told him off for saying those things about Addie, he said. At the end of the day, she is my daughter. I would die for her. But sometimes you have to tell the truth so others don't think you're trying to hide it. I stand by every word. I reminded him that Addie was my wife and I didn't want to hear things like that. They put their hands on me and smiled. Even rehab, no matter how grueling, was now filled with happy thoughts. There were more victories than failures, and we did it together. Addie always looked at me in awe at the end of the most intense sessions. I wanted love, not fear, but in many ways we had never been closer. Things had never been better. I thanked again that I was allowed to dig deeper within myself to stay and support her and not kill Rob. All the lonely suffering was worth it. Everything is fine. Addie was alive and mine. My world was complete. This went on for several months. I truly may have been the most contented person on earth. I knew things weren't perfect and she hadn't come to terms with her guilt. Of course, she didn't fully confess either. We both knew what she did, but I didn't have the details. Not how long or intense, and certainly not why. I wasn't sure what else I could do to convince her that she was forgiven, that I didn't want to think about it anymore. I just wanted her. Even when I spoke the real words, they seemed to distort something inside her. I decided that I just needed to give her time. And if I had to go through this weird ritual of hers until she forgave herself, I thought I could get over it. Something had been bothering Eddie for weeks, simmering beneath the surface, and now it was more intense. On the way back from her ongoing rehab, she barely spoke. When I momentarily placed my hand on the center console, she grabbed it and pulled it to her lips. She then held it in her lap with both hands. Her movements were full of despair. I drove home with one hand on the wheel. Although Addie still needed help getting out of the car from time to time, she was getting around quite well. She walked inside and headed to the living room. This was unusual because after strenuous efforts, she almost always preferred the kitchen or shower, so something was really different. She looked up and saw me standing there. She jumped in surprise, then smiled, shaking her head. "You must have radar. You can read my mind and know when I need you." She stopped. All movements just absorbed me, looking at me, although something was wrong about it. "Jim, can I talk to you, please?" I replied, trying to sound cheerful. "Always. There's never a bad time to talk to you. I want to know everything you're thinking." Her head dropped. I didn't want to hurt her by bringing up our past problems. She knew I didn't mean to hurt her. She smiled gratefully. Her eyes radiated love. "You always knew when I needed you, and you always knew what I was thinking before, and then everything changed. It was because you trusted me. I used that trust to hide the truth from you. You never saw my wrongdoings because you had no reason to look. Until that moment, I never gave you a reason to lose faith in me." Her tears were flowing now. "I'm so sorry. I'm terribly, terribly sorry. I want to talk about this, but I need to say something else first." Addie took my hand. I've never met a more wonderful person, and I truly mean it. I'm honored to be by your side. I'll come back to that later. Rehab and everything you've done for me. You were tireless in your support, unshakable in your confidence, boundless in your love. There were moments like childbirth when the pain was so intense that I had to turn it into emotions to relieve some of the tension. I screamed and cursed during rehab, sometimes at you. I don't think I ever called you names or blamed you, but your face was the one I screamed at, and you always responded with a caring, loving expression to calm me down. You absorbed every offensive attack, reproach, and injury to ease my pain, and because of that, well, we'll come back to this. Addie tried to find the words. "Jim, I understand that sometimes the pain caused me to cling to you so tightly that I left bruises. I also left more than a few scratches on you. I see them when you take off your clothes at night, or lately when we shower. I'm sorry your help cost you not only time, love, and energy, but I hurt you physically. And I think I'm trying to do that now, but even more. I want to thank you. I just can't express how grateful I am. You were amazing." I clung to her words. Was it in the past tense? Addie looked like she was choking. No, this is not right. A lot of things are wrong. I hate it and myself more than a little." She fell silent for a while. "You even gave me time and space. You should know my friends and family judged me for Rob. You even allowed him to come to the hospital. I can't believe your generosity and mercy. I can't. I never will, and I never will. You've done more for me than anyone has ever done. I want you to know that, Jim. God bless me." This wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear. Since we were clearing the air, I tried to explain. "I let him come to the hospital at night so he could avoid your family. I didn't want them to hurt you. Also, Eddie, I didn't see the point in you hurting them. I wasn't the one to tell them honestly. I don't know how they found out." She turned away and nodded before adding, "And his coming to sit next to me, as well as his existence, hurt you?" Addie swallowed before quietly saying, "I understand that you were already sitting next to my bed, spending every night next to me and practically every waking minute you could. And then he showed up at night. That must have been terrible for you, Jim." "Not as much as the fact that he kept coming to you after you woke up, which meant you wanted his visits." Eddie's face contorted in pain, and I added to make it worse, "And I understand you're still in a relationship with him." Her mouth fell open. She was like a deer in headlights. I guess the shock is that I rediscovered it. "I know you were on the phone with him when I left." I raised my hand to stop her. Questions or objections? No, I didn't check. I didn't try to read your messages and emails. You either love me or you don't. If there were things you wanted me to know, you would have told me. Unfortunately, I also know that you are hiding things from me. I didn't want to admit it, but Rob had to know that you wanted his visits after you woke up in the hospital. Otherwise, he would have stopped coming since I never heard him ask you directly. It probably meant you communicated through your friends or family until you could arrange his visits yourself. There must be something about me that people like. Betray. Once you felt better, you kept doing it through your phone, text, or whatever. Her chest heaved heavily. She looked at me in bewilderment. It's not that I didn't know you were having an affair. I talked to your lover, for God's sake. I made excuses for him to the people who love you, and I treated you despite it. Because I love you. Eddie's eyes were huge. I could barely hear her breathing. She seemed to understand that I knew how often she saw him before the accident. I think she thought I was thinking about a momentary fling, not a romance, and certainly not that I considered their messages to be a continuation of their romance. I knew he hadn't slept with her since the accident. He hadn't been around her long enough, but sex was only part of the betrayal. What else could be the messages between changing lovers? The only exception would be a message to him saying it's over and I never want to see you again. I paused for myself and to let Eddie calm down. I was calm as I continued. You just said I showed you mercy. Yes, I did, because I wanted it, because you needed it, and because I need you in my life. Recently, your affair with Rob resumed again despite my devotion to you. I came home shopping for us and heard you talking on the phone. I walked up the stairs rejoicing at your joyful voice. I was surprised what friend you were talking to, only to hear the flirtatious tone in your voice when you said his name. I just came back down, giving you what you wanted. You weren't healed yet. Joy helps healing. I didn't mean to ruin your joy at that moment, although I admit I was half dead when I got to the bottom of the stairs. It killed me that I didn't fill you with that joy, because if I did, you wouldn't need it. Knowing that you probably called him as soon as I left was the icing on the cake. You have no idea how many tears I shed for you. I cried because I loved you so much, because you were in terrible pain. You were in a coma and you gave half of your heart to him. Don't tell me otherwise. I hear your joy when you talk to him, and I see that it is less when you are with me. I wasn't angry at her. I was sad about the situation. Addie was quick to respond. Jim, I'm so sorry. It didn't have to be this way. I hate it. I want you to be happy. And Jim, if this means anything to you, I want to want you. I really do. Eddie turned away. Seeing my skepticism, she forced herself to look at me again. My voice stayed calm but less patient. I'm going to let go of my emotions. This has to end, Eddie. You need to decide if you hate this enough and if you're sorry enough to tell that man to go away forever and leave us in peace. I've given you enough time to tell him to leave. I've given you more than enough time to understand who loves you more and better. I want to see love in your eyes again, not just respect and admiration. I turned and left, fed up with the situation. When Eddie finally made the right choice, I decided to make sure Rob never bothered us again. When I was done with him, there wouldn't even be a body left. People who say revenge isn't fun have simply set the wrong parameters or haven't invested enough in it. I was going to enjoy this. Later, I heard Addie on the phone crying. I hoped this was the end. Finally, a complete restoration for my family. I had suffered and given a lot. If you've ever felt true love, you won't doubt it. If you haven't felt it, it will be completely incomprehensible. My heart deserved joy. I deserved it. Addie was an individual, but she was also my wife. We were partners. Although that partnership had been one-sided for too long, I saw this conversation as necessary and as a balm. Still, the situation had twisted me so much that I had no remorse for eavesdropping in the hallway. Rob? No, that won't work. No, you don't understand. No, he's better than you. No, Rob, that's not what I meant. Jim is better than me, too. Rob, I was going to, but I can't. This is his house, our home. You were too intrusive in the hospital, and Jim even took care of you, fought with my family to protect you, fought his pain over your existence. I am a married woman, and they all protect my marriage as well. It must be. I know we didn't ask for this to happen. I know what we share, Rob. I know it's been a long time. Damn it, Rob. Jim comes in sometimes when I'm talking to you and he knows. Who is this? Fortunately, in my voice. This is not just a slap in the face, this is a spit in his face. He is my partner, giving his all. And you want me to force him to let you into our house so you can be with me? I only heard Eddie's side of the conversation, but it sounded incredible to the point of anger. Fine, she protected me. She protected us. Let this man show himself for what he is. Yes, this may finally be the end. I continued to listen. Rob, I'm walking again. I'm getting stronger. I don't know why you two stayed with me. My legs, which were so beautiful, aren't beautiful anymore. I'm going to have cosmetic surgery to make them look more normal, but they will never be my best asset again. No, Rob, I can't. I owe him something. He did everything. Rob, try to understand. You want to come here? You want to be with me? You love me and want to see me. But as soon as you come here, you will strive to send Jim away. No, you don't understand. You have to understand. Jim can kill you. I felt a pause on his part. He probably didn't want to hear the woman he loved tell him that his rival was better and could kill him. I'm sure he felt the same way I did when I heard my wife telling another man to stay away. Not because she loved me, but because he might get hurt. Addie spoke to Rob again. There is no doubt that the only reason you are still alive is because Jim loves me. Now she exploded in anger. Don't ever say that again. If you had pointed a gun at him, he would have taken it from you and shoved it down your throat. He doesn't have to put up with all this. All that I did. He took it all because of how much he loves me. That's what keeps you alive. He doesn't want to make you a martyr to me. He doesn't want his actions to break any part of my heart, even the traitorous part. Think about it, Rob. You think about yourself. He thinks about me. Jim loves me as completely as possible. In fact, it goes beyond my understanding, which undermines what he deserves. And in fact, curses me. Me? That you won't want to touch me if you see me. No, I won't let you come here. It wasn't nearly as definitive as I wanted, but I thought the hammer was about to fall, and it fell. So, honey, you'll have to wait to see me again until I can go out on my own. I don't remember anything she said after that. Yes, the hammer fell, pinning me in place. I just left the house. He didn't know I was back from running errands, and she didn't seem to particularly need my presence either. In a daze, I went to visit Eddie's friend Carol and told her what I had overheard. I just had to tell someone else before I talked to my wife. I couldn't let the message overwhelm me as I tried to reach the messenger. I needed a trial version. When Carol heard what happened, she gasped loudly in the cafe where we met. Then she actually started crying. She said something about how she wanted to believe in this world. She knew it wasn't perfect, but it could be beautiful. Except when it was impossible to see it as anything other than hell. I had to agree. I asked Carol to go to my wife and sit with her because I didn't want to be away so long that she would again pollute my love for her while I was talking to her parents. Carol agreed. We separated to attend to our unpleasant duties. When I told them about the situation, Eddie's parents seemed just as heartbroken as I was. I told them if Rob wins this day and wins her heart, I understand that Addie is your daughter, so I won't see you much after this. That's a tragedy in itself. I love you guys. That man will never be our son, Eddie's father exclaimed. So will you banish your daughter for Christmas? I asked with great sympathy, pointing out their problem. Yes, her father said immediately. I saw Eddie's mother's heartbreak. I put my hand on Eddie's father's shoulder. You know what the worst part is, Dad? I might have called him Daddy for the last time. He's not a bad person. Really. Think of a man who's in love with a woman and serves her best by staying away. It's not easy for him. I checked on him. He has no history of mistreating women. In fact, past acquaintances said he always talked about the one who left until he got married. Then he devoted himself entirely to his wife. After her death, he transferred to another department because everything around him reminded him of her. This is what I don't like. He chose to move here to be closer to his wife. Apparently, something separated them, which they both regretted. I don't think it matters now. Something that seemed impossible in youth, but is nonsense in adulthood. Eddie is an honest woman, but she decided to discredit herself rather than separate from Rob. My mother-in-law said, "But Jim, I talked to him at the hospital. Thanks to you, by the way, I finally remembered where I heard about him. He dated Eddie in the past. As a man, he's probably not bad, but he's not you." what you have done for our daughter throughout our marriage, especially after this accident. And if I understand correctly, since you found out about her betrayal, it's simply beyond praise. Rob wouldn't be Eddie's choice. She practically begged me to agree with her. I was hoping for that too. I don't know what else I could have done. I hoped that what I did would be more than enough. But it might not be enough. And you needed to know that we all need to prepare for that possibility. It's funny, but I feel guilty for not giving her the benefit of the doubt. I felt this way all this time, and every time I was spat in the face for my attention. We looked at each other, feeling helpless. I drove home slowly. I needed to clear my head. I loved driving, so it was a nice escape. When I got home, Carol heard me and flew down the stairs. Sobbing, she hugged me. "Take care of yourself, Jim. I hope you can be happy now." I had no idea what happened to cause Carol's actions, and I couldn't tell through her sobs whether her message foreshadowed something good or bad. She quickly ran away from my house. I headed upstairs to our bedroom, where my wife was also crying. Addie looked at me with a broken heart. Jim, my good friend Carol, out of love for me, just gave me the lecture of a lifetime. She is lonely, and I have the most devoted and loving husband in the world. She would die for a man who would care for her even a small part of how you love me. I know that I was terrible to you. I yearned, I prayed to become better. Addie paused for a moment, shaking her head sadly. Carol had just finished talking to me when my parents called. They said that you were with them and that you heard my conversation with Rob. I thought that Carol knew about it too, but decided not to tell me, thinking that it's better to try to reach me with a different tactic than through guilt for telling the truth. My parents happily used the information Carol left behind. They said you were ecstatic, thinking you heard me tell Rob to leave, and were almost to the bedroom door when you heard me agreeing to see him later. Jim, I was hoping to see him in person because... Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Please, Jim, believe in me a little more and forgive me for what I'm about to say. I hope with every fiber that you will be happy to some extent when this conversation ends. Jim, you know me. I don't give my heart away easily. And since then, I'm sorry, Jim. Since I was with Rob years ago, I can't give my body without love. He and I loved each other when we were close. When we stopped dating, I thought that love in my life was over. Like everyone else, I crave intimacy. But I couldn't live with another man until you came into my life. Like a tidal wave compared to Rob's oasis. I gave myself completely to you. I knew I could, without hesitation. Because you were an unshakable rock. You will never stop loving me. I know that because of what I have done. And through that, I fooled you. You will never stop loving me. Addie looked at me with eyes that were as deep as the ocean, and just as mysterious and incomprehensible. It wasn't because I couldn't read her feelings, but because there were so many emotions. She took my hand. Her grip was strong. It was like the rehab days and carried the message, "Don't let go." You heard what you thought was my desire to rekindle the affair. I'll tell you exactly how I feel about Rob. I love him. Wait, this is different from you. Very different. You're head and shoulders above him. I told him this. You are stronger and more capable, both emotionally and physically. You are a better lover, protector, and provider. Rob and I are so similar. It makes us a terrible couple, doesn't it? He's like me, almost a mirror. Rob and I enhance the good and the bad in each other. You're different, Jim. To me, you're like a force of nature, if not nature itself. That's pretty scary, Jim. I loved Rob once, and it started again. I swear it's not a new love. It's an old love. I didn't fall in love with a new man. Nothing got through the armor of your love, but he was already inside. With Rob, it's just a feeling of rightness and belonging. But you're something else. It's like you're the truth or something. Something I can't define. Something much bigger than me. I wanted to object, but Addie continued, not allowing me to speak. Jim, I loved Rob once and it started again. And yes, as you know, it got physical. Eddie's tears became stronger and she couldn't hold my gaze. It took her a few minutes to calm down, but she fought to regain her composure the entire time. I was impressed. She really wanted me to know and understand her feelings and motives. What I didn't understand was very important to her. You may not believe it, but I never stopped loving you. I didn't want to move away, but the guilt. I had a rock of guilt and I wasn't up to your standard, and I didn't have to be. All I had to do was not fail. I didn't have to be tough. I didn't have to do anything but be myself. So of course, I failed. I started to speak, but Addie cut me off. Jim, this is very important to both of us, but especially to you. I didn't mean to distance myself from you. I pulled away because of the crushing guilt, not because of Rob. Eddie's expression was the definition of shame as she explained further. I felt unworthy of you, but I also knew how much my betrayal hurt you. I should have stopped it. But the attraction to him was irresistible. I think it's obvious at this point. I failed you, hurt you, and was full of guilt. Who else could give me shelter and comfort? This is the worst twist in all of this. Rob, who was the cause of all my negative feelings, was the only one I could share them with. So the man I shouldn't have been with, who made me pull away from you, became the one I turned to for comfort. It all accumulated. It was like a snowball rolling down a mountain. I'm just trying to explain. I would never dare justify my actions. You can't spit in the face of love, Jim. You've been saying that for a long time. So to be honest with love, I loved Rob, I have to admit it, and honestly, Jim, I still love him. I got up and went. I was full of it. I needed to let off some steam before I burst. Addie rushed after me. Wait, please wait, Jim. We're getting to the point. Just a few more seconds. I dodged her tug and walked toward the door. Addie began to climb over the bed to catch up with me. She was still on all fours, which must have hurt a lot despite her rehabilitation. She quickly screamed after me, "You are completely superior to him in every way. I love you, Jim. Jim, I really do." I was so amazed by her words that I stopped and looked at her. Addie took the opportunity to quickly say more. While I felt this for him, I felt like I couldn't tell him to leave over the phone. I had to tell him in person at the hospital. I was weak and not yet myself, and to be honest, I was scared to death to say anything. I was too weak to handle his objections, so yes, I wanted to see him one last time in person to tell him it was all over. Eddie saw that instead of calming me down, she increased the tension. She blurted out, "Let me warn you, I'm not saying I'm a tower of virtue. You might ask if seeing him one last time means I'd like to spend one last night with him. I can't deny that Rob has power over me, Jim, so I pray that this doesn't happen. It's not good enough for us, or for me. I wanted a place that was public enough that it wouldn't happen, but private enough that it wouldn't humiliate him. I was worried that he had lost his wife and parents, and there was only one person left with whom he had a strong connection. I was a naive fool in the past. I know I was flirty on the phone. I'm ashamed of what you heard. I didn't want to give him any reason to suspect anything. I already said that I'm not strong enough. I accepted that he has power over me, even how I feel about him. Please, Jim. I didn't want him to raise the stakes and start coming here to change my mind. Someone would have seen him and told you, and you would have thought I was deceiving you again. Or I hate this. He would have talked me into letting him in. If he had done that, I don't know if I could have stopped him. Do you understand, Jim? You have forgiven the betrayal. Can you forgive my way of ending it?" Addie sighed. "No secrets, my love." She shook her head in obvious disgust at what she was about to say. "Forgive me. Neither Rob nor I are as strong as you. If the roles were reversed between you and him, you would be noble enough not to do it. I don't know if Rob can. He's a good man." She lowered her head. "As disgusting as it is to tell you this, I believe it, although it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But how many good people could push this away? I sincerely hope that I would have been strong enough to prevent this." She lowered her head again. "Although we already know that I was painfully weak." It took Addie a moment to compose herself and stop her tears. I was interested that she recognized many of the problems and their depth. I wanted to hear more about her plan to fix everything. All she had to do was ask me to intervene and I would make sure he never bothered us again. But she said she loved him. I needed to hear more about it. My parents were beside themselves on the phone. They consider you their son. My father begged me not to make today the last time you called him Dad. He even said that if you can no longer call him father, then he will. It's fair that I couldn't either. He said you're too good of a person to hurt Rob, but he's not like that. He said he would view Rob as a stranger attacking his son, even if his daughter didn't admit that Rob is an attack on her marriage. I was more than taken aback by the direction the conversation took. It was a lot to take in her panicked state. Addie didn't give me time to think or respond. She seemed confident that any time to think would lead to a negative outcome. She hurried to fill the silence again. My mother took a different approach. She said you healed me, and in return I shouldn't kill you. She told me to think about life without you. It broke me. Carol and I cried all the time. Carol told me to record the next conversation in case you ever need to hear it. So I did. She's very thoughtful about it. Take my phone. It's set to talk. All you have to do is press play, Carol. I recorded it too, so you can compare and see I didn't edit it. Jim, do you want to hear this? I told Rob on the phone to leave and never come back. I did it for our marriage and for another reason. I told you that I have never loved you less. Well, when I thanked you for helping me in rehab, I thanked and praised you and even asked for your blessing, but I couldn't believe it. I never told you that I loved you. You didn't tell Carol, and she told me. Jim, I hurt you in many ways for a long time, even before I knew I would see Rob in person. Of course, you thought that I chose him. I love you. I love you as much as I can, loving you better every day. I love you, Jim. Addie opened her arms, more nervous and excited than ever. She really didn't know what I would decide. I wasn't in a hurry to get to her, but I didn't make her wait either. I walked up to her and hugged her. She grabbed my shirt so tightly that she scratched me through the fabric. Then she just broke down. She seemed completely involved, completely sincere. But it was more of a relief than a reunion. I still felt something was wrong. Then I asked myself if this was what I wanted, and it was. Had I retreated? Even if it was only for a moment. This was everything I wanted in life. Now that I have what I wanted, I allowed myself to enjoy it. When I let go and hugged Addie as tightly as I should have, she just melted away. I was thrilled that Addie was back. The next few months were heaven for me. Everyone, even Addie, commented on her recovery and my support and obvious love for her and Addie's respect. I don't know what to call it. Admiration for me. I know a lot of men never get this, so it's strange to say that even when you're basking in it, it's obvious that something serious is missing. I felt that the distance was growing between us. She looked at me with admiration for a long time, and then it seemed that she was more surprised at me. I didn't deserve this, but this strange feeling, especially in comparison, was alarming. I think everyone felt it as strongly as I did. It had to reach a boiling point. Addie stared at me as we prepared Sunday lunch in the kitchen. Her expression was amazing. I had never seen anything like it. Admiration mixed with dread. She obediently prepared everything she usually prepared to start. Our intimate afternoon coffee was an unusual addition. She smiled at me at every opportunity, almost like a housewife from a 50s sitcom. I moved us into the living room, simply leaving the kitchen there, and she followed me. When she handed me the coffee, her hands were shaking. She stood almost motionless, ready to offer me a drink. She put it on the table and some coffee spilled, burning her hand. She looked in horror at the small amount of coffee spilled and the noise it made. It ruined the presentation and performance. A small incident threw her off the obvious script. She hurried to her dialogue. Jim, I'm ready to remain your wife and try to make you happy for the rest of your days. These words seemed strange between husband and wife. Why do I feel... Her head shook slightly in a no gesture, but her eyes never left mine. It's not fair and it's not good, she mumbled. Oh God, I thought, what's going on? Addie saw my face as I tried not to fall apart. But Jim, I long to be with Rob. I love you, I really do, but Rob... Addie squeezed her eyes shut. Her lips moved as if she was having an internal dialogue. She tried again. You and I work so well together. We're perfect. Let's combine. I know this won't always be the best match, but Rob and I are almost the same. Addie stopped again. Her brow furrowed. Her mouth made a terrible expression, as if she was about to vomit. She was terrified when she finally formed the words. They were composed of pure sincerity. I really love you, Jim. I want to love you more. I'm mad at God for not loving you more than Rob. I never felt myself falling. I only felt the impact of hitting the floor. Addie quickly walked towards me, but she still couldn't move quickly on her restored legs. I must have been lying there for a while. When she got to me, she knelt in front of me, hugging me. I knew it hurt her to kneel. But I love you, Addie. I know, she said, sobbing. And I love you. Forgive me. I love you more than I think many or most wives love their husbands. And I know that you love me more than any husband I ever knew loves his wife. But, oh, I can't say it again. There must be a devil, Jim, because this must be his work. I've never felt anything but admiration for your presence. So why am I given a friend for whom my feelings can develop into this? It's love, but it seems wicked. But it's love. I know we can't go forward together." She looked at me almost hopefully for a second. "Of course we can't. That would be a spit in the face of true love." I was as loud as I was obnoxious. I was something she feared. Wounded, of course, but also disappointed in her. It burned her to the core, and this may explain the problem in our relationship. She cried and nodded. "I know, Jim. You didn't do anything wrong. You always put me first, and now, the time, the money, the effort. Oh, God, the love and dedication you put into my healing. You healed me when I was broken. You forgave me when I broke your heart. How could things turn out this way? I don't want to feel this way more than anything." Then she added quietly, "And I know that no one has ever loved me or loves me more. I know it, and I need you to know that I know it. It's just not fair, but I promise you, because of everything you have done for me, I surrender myself into your hands. If you insist, I will stay with you. I will send Rob away." Her offer of loyalty and devotion seemed more like an insult. Her eyes opened in fear as she finished, seeing the complete disgust on my face mixed with absolute heartache in my eyes. I could read her thoughts. She had expressed herself poorly. Her words brought me more pain than anything else. "If I insist," I repeated, almost furious, "will you stay with me and send Rob away? He shouldn't be around at all. If he's here, it's because you want him here. Will you make the ultimate sacrifice by leaving him? That shouldn't be a sacrifice. It should have never happened. And this offer, which is actually your duty, should be some evidence of my worth. But you'll send him away if I insist and then blame me for it. Should you send him away? You should have sent him away a long time ago, 1,000 times over. If you send him away because I insist and not because it's the right thing to do, will it destroy your feelings for me? Will it always be between us? Regret what you did? Will you stay if I insist? You make me sound like a creep or some ugly monster. All I ever did was love you." Addie looked helpless. No, that's not what I meant. But that's what you said. I married you, not him. I loved you first. I owe you," she said, as if trying to convince herself more than me. I kept my mouth shut for a long time, but it was too much. It was time to be honest. Addie knew she had turned love into something twisted and ugly. The truth was only ugly because she made it that way, only because of a commitment to me. "You should have left him before it became love, but now you love him more. You've shirked your commitment to me at every turn. It's a little late to play the martyr." She turned away. "I can't tell you how sorry I am. In many ways, I would have preferred death instead of this moment. Instead of telling you this, even instead of you finding out about my affair." "What? You finding out about this in the hospital where you were with me day and night only makes it worse?" "I already knew," I hissed. Addie gasped. My next statement was less intense. The sad reality sank in. "I've known for a while. I waited months for it to pass. It didn't. I wanted you to see it as a dirty deal. You didn't. I wanted you to choose me. You didn't choose. It was killing me. We had a weekend planned before your accident. I planned to talk about it all then. I was going to make you see how dirty it was. Then I was going to send Rob away." Addie was shocked. She cried and cried. Oh, God, Jim. Maybe I got my wish. What do you mean?" "My point is that I would rather die than ever tell you this. Maybe I should have died in the accident. I was on my way to Rob's when it happened. I planned. Oh, God, this is not fair. Nothing is right. Neither then nor now. You and I planned to go away for the weekend. Instead, I planned, but I tried to talk myself out of telling you on the Friday before we left. That I'm leaving you to be with Rob." My righteous anger went out like a candle. Addie tried to explain. "My mindset was that you didn't have to see anyone or deal with this all weekend because we were planning on going away together. So if I left you on Friday, you'd have that time away from everyone to gather yourself before facing the real world without me." Eddie's eyes practically projected tears. Mine were supposed to be lasers, but they were cold. I thought, oh my God, she's still talking. "But Jim, it also seemed cruel to tell you and leave you to wallow in it. I never meant to hurt you or be cruel to you. And yet there was no way not to be. Now, knowing that you already knew and were going to take me away to save our union at the very time I was planning to destroy it is heartbreaking in itself. I thought I couldn't feel worse. I'm damned, aren't I? Addie asked herself out loud, how can you be cursed because of love? Then, to her credit, Addie thought about how that remark hurt me. Her face turned towards me with wide eyes. I'm sorry, Jim. It was thoughtless. Her eyes were huge and full of fear, as if she saw me burning at the stake. I shook my head to clear my thoughts and replied, yes, it was thoughtless. No, you're not cursed. My love will have the blessings of love. You will feel bad about me. Fair enough. But you will have Rob to hug and comfort you, and you will have someone to whom you can give your love. Let me tell you what it means to be cursed because of love. I love someone who does not want my love, who will not accept my love. The terrible math added up in my head. It looks like it's true. I'm cursed because of love. Eddie's face became a mask of horror, as if she had seen the revelation of all-consuming doom. She feared the curse because of love and miraculously escaped it, but only by sending me to suffer her fate. Oh my Lord, Jim, what have I done? I never wanted this to happen. I would have died to prevent it. But I did. You can't pay for my sin. But you pay. Jim, please. How can I stop this, Eddie? I will fight to the death for you if you let me. Do you want me to win your heart? This was the last chance for the biggest thing I had found in life. Addie was sobbing, just sobbing. Jim, I love you. I don't know what you'll make of this, and it hurts, Rob. But I tried to seduce you into loving me when I had favorable days. I stopped taking the pills after the accident. It was a chemical we could lose to avoid potential interactions with other medications the doctors were giving me. You were my nurse. Somehow you needed to clean and deal with my woman's mechanisms in nature. Only strengthened everything that was wrong. But you didn't even wrinkle your nose. I cried for many reasons, the main one being that I wanted to be pregnant and only with your child. I was completely yours all this time. Pregnancy would force me to make a choice. You wanted to stay with me, and I would raise your child and leave everything else, including Rob. It was cowardly, but it would take the decision off my shoulders. I would enjoy being your wife and the mother of your children. Having your children would bring us closer, but Jim, this is where the problem lies. Explain this, Eddie. I believe that you chose another man over me and still wanted to be with me and raise our children. I cannot reconcile these opposing desires. She almost screamed, but it's true. I wouldn't be torn, not one bit. You may be on a different level than me. There are many times when I feel like I can't reach you, but you love me completely, and I love you. And, oh God, you must always put the children first so that the decision would be made for me. Any personal desires would be overcome, avoided, and forgotten, since the circumstances would be different. I prayed for guidance, and the thought of having your children came to me. I thought it was the answer to my prayers, but it didn't happen. The doctor says that I will function properly again, but I am still so weak that my body is not yet completely healed. Stress affects conception. This was my doctor's best answer as to why my prayers were not answered. If I could have children, I would be completely with you. I swear to you, Jim, I would be completely with you. Her face was joyful at the thought of no longer being torn between two loves. Then she was sad, returning to the reality of our situation. As it is, I have a decision to make, and I'm torn. I'm not completely with you. I know what I have to do in these circumstances. Jim, I am being as honest as possible with you for your sake, for our sake, and even for my own sake. Thinking about you, I sincerely wish that these were not such circumstances. So much of me loves you. So much of my heart loves you. But with a heart, it's all or nothing. I'm terribly sorry, Jim. My heart wants Rob. It's a good thing I was on the floor. Otherwise, I would have fallen again. I'm sure I looked dazed and lost. I looked at my beloved wife, who was now hovering above me, and everything seemed unreal. At the same time, my heart was breaking, and I felt like I was dying. Honestly, if it was real and I could choose to die, I would seriously consider it. Eddie looked strange. She turned gray again. Oh, Jim, that's something you can't forgive, can you? Oh, Jim, you can't die. And I can't be the one that kills you. Oh, Jim. Addie looked broken and guilty, but I felt that maybe not all the blame was mine, and I don't know if what she did next was meant to make amends to the other or to support me and keep me from being destroyed by letting me know that I was in the presence of an enemy. He, Rob, is here. Jim, can I let him in? All I could think about were the lines from the Ave Maria prayer at the hour of our death. To understand how deeply I felt this, understand that I am not Catholic. Strangely, I felt my heart beating faster. It was not a blow of love. It was the trembling of a mortally wounded man who must save his children from a car accident before they get hurt too. There was something contemptuous in my disappointment here. You brought him here for this conversation. This is extremely ungrateful. I backtracked on most of the words I was thinking of using. Even so, Eddie acted as if part of her had simply fallen to the floor next to me. Sorry, I didn't mean to ruin it, but no, don't forgive me. She should have known what was going on. She deserved it. It also gives absolute falsehood to your words about loving me, and absolute confirmation to your statement about the insufficiency of your love for me. Insufficiency by absence. I paused, then added, well, of course, the wages of the vanquished are mine. No mercy, no dignity, only the taste of ashes. I shook my head. I don't deserve much of this, Eddie, but I don't deserve this extra humiliation at all. This is as personal as it gets for me, and you invite a witness to celebrate my downfall. You must hate me. We could at least do this privately. Share me intimately instead of publicly. Are you filming this for the internet? This hooked me, and I had to consider my options. Many actions, both good and bad, can be exactly the same and are determined only by the motivation behind them. Eddie bent under some large, invisible weight. She curled up on her hip, raising herself up with her arms outstretched. She tried to say something. It sounded like she was choking. Something like no, or I didn't mean it that way. I wasn't sure her motives mattered much since they were gut punches while I was on the floor anyway, and I shouldn't have been on the floor in the first place. I'll still feel sorry for her even if she can't be decent to me. Strangely, it seemed like she intended it to be some kind of slow, controlled decline for me rather than what it turned out to be. She knew me. How could she believe that it would be anything else? To hell with it. She made her choice. Let's see what else she had planned. I nodded to her to let her lover in. As soon as Rob heard me agree, he entered. He stood next to Eddie, holding her between us. I had no desire to stay with her if she wanted him around. I pulled myself together and stood up. I went to the computer. Our home had a sophisticated security system that I installed while it was being restored. I wanted to know if Eddie needed help if she was in trouble anywhere. I wanted her to know that she could reach out to me from anywhere. I made a copy of our recent conversation in the living room and sent it to my phone. Rob and Eddie didn't care what I was doing. They were too caught up in their feelings. I think this conversation was so traumatic for Addie that she needed to have her own support ready. This was another blow to me. She cared about herself, but not about me. Damn it, I was ambushed. Now it was an ambush. What started as a cordial conversation between spouses changed when Rob showed up. Addie saw how his presence changed my perception of everything. She closed her eyes, realizing his presence was a huge mistake. I looked at them. He was trying to help her, but she was in despair. I know my face showed not just despair and pain, but also disgust and contempt. I didn't deserve this. Yet here I was, struck and destroyed by her actions. She didn't think about my feelings. They moved forward, starting to heal so they could love. I was yesterday's hero and yesterday's news. Sometimes a good guy gets fed up. Sometimes he does things for himself. I looked at Rob with hostility. The situation was bad enough, but he didn't belong here. He saw my angry look. So many emotions to juggle. Thank you too, I thought. Rob was reluctant to speak. When he finally did, he tried to sound as conciliatory as possible. Jim, he finally asked, what are you doing? I didn't turn to him. Rob, I answered as I continued to work. First of all, Addie is my wife, and this is my home. Touching her here puts you in grave danger. Do you understand? His hands, which were reaching out to Eddie, froze. To her credit, Eddie immediately began to crawl away from him. Despite what she did, her face now showed pure compassion for me. Secondly, Rob, my family thinks Addie is the greatest woman in the world. That's because I told them she is. Addie's parents told me they couldn't imagine a better life partner for their daughter than me. Moreover, I am the son they never had. Eddie started crying louder. Rob's face went through many expressions as he came to his conclusions. Wait, you don't understand. Rob said, I continued. Some friends who know us as a couple will want revenge. Some will be angry at Eddie or me. Eddie was honest with me about the facts. She wants you, not me, and she is sorry. She is deceiving herself, thinking she still holds me in some special way. She doesn't love me enough to fight for me or hold me. Or frankly, from what I see here, care about me. I shook my head, figuring no one wanted to hear more. The truth was too ugly. After a pause, I added, Rob, I'm sorry. You won't love Eddie as well as I can or do. That's why if you loved her and saw her break under the pressure of your demands, if you knew she was in love with her husband who treats her well and loves her, you would remove yourself from the equation. That is, if you loved her as much as I do. But because I love her, I see how impossible my position is, and that my fighting for her will only hurt her. So I remove myself from the situation. I love you, Eddie, too much. Eddie howled. I was working against myself. Rob looked at me with his mouth open. I took this as an invitation to explain further. Rob, I don't think either of us believes you wouldn't be dead in seconds if I wanted it. Well, I really want it, but your death would hurt Eddie. So instead, I will die pushing you out of the way because I love Eddie so much. I lost it. It amazes me that I was never given the chance to fight for what I want most in life, the woman I thought was mine. Even after knowing about this affair for a while, Addie lost her love for me before I knew about it. I was dead all this time and just didn't know it. That explains the expressions on her face that I couldn't read anymore. All those deep looks I got from her were pity or something other than love. Damn it. I could feel the lack of love. I shook my head to no one in particular. Addie may not have had control over who she loved, but what she said to me with Rob here showed a complete lack of compassion for the person she once loved. When my veil lifted, I added soberly, I want one thing in the future. It could be far in the future. I never thought of you as a bad person, so why? And how could you continue to accept my love, using it for your healing when you already knew you stopped loving me? Before she could answer, I shrugged. I don't want to hear another word from her today. It's time to end this. I pointed to the corner of the ceiling. This conversation, this scene, this mess was captured by the security system I installed to keep an eye on Eddie as she recovered. It wasn't for spying on her. I thought I had defeated you. There was no need to spy. This was to make sure Eddie didn't fall and be left without help or compassion. Today's recording will allow those who need to speak out on this matter to know that it was love on her part and futile on mine. No matter how sad the end of our marriage was, this is what needs to be done, and they need to leave it. Those who will be angry about this should just leave you alone. It's too late. It's over. They need to direct their efforts and energy elsewhere, so this will be my last gift to you both. I heard Addie sigh and then in a hoarse voice say, Jim, one day I'll talk to you alone. I'll do it right when we do it. I'm so sorry about today, everything that happened today and everything that led to this. But you already have the answer. So I will meet you that day to answer it. I do not agree with your assessment of my love for you. I am pathetically weak, and I have failed miserably in loving you. A good and true person should never go through this with the love of their life. I needed you and loved you, and I never wanted to be apart from you. I need you now, but I know I shouldn't. I can't keep taking from you if I can't be completely yours, especially when you give yourself to me so completely. I shouldn't keep taking your love. I tried and failed. I know my failure will crush you, and I'm sorry for that too. I didn't deserve your love. All you wanted in life was a flawed me, and I wanted to give you that. All the demigod who loved me wanted was a weak, unworthy mortal, me, and I wanted to give you what you wanted. I knew that I would ruin it every time I thought about it. I felt less compared to you, and I felt more distant. I didn't want that. Obviously, I never found a way to fight it. I still love you and always will, but that's not enough. I have to answer for this, Jim, and when the day comes, I won't let you down. But Jim, I fear that the chance to redeem myself won't come in this life, no matter how hard I tried to find a way out. I couldn't escape my fate of hurting you in exchange for your love. We were silent for a while. I thought about the things I need to take with me. The thought was spinning in my head. Finally, I said, I don't see why I have to leave. It's on you, Eddie. You have to go. I saw on Rob's face how he didn't expect this and wasn't interested in the house being manna from heaven for him. This calmed my anger. I added, but really, staying here now would haunt me with the echo of your absence. I sighed. If you haven't already, Eddie, don't sleep in our bed with him. Just throw away the mattress with the memories of me on it. She showed no signs of guilt about Rob's visits to our bed, so at least I had that. She didn't even pale at my less-than-romantic term for their physical expression of love. I turned to collect my things. I added while my back was to them, "Eddie, I won't cause you or Rob any problems, but try to stay away from me. I don't want a humiliating encounter with you and another man." Eddie could tell I wasn't finished. I hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't burden my question with my own losses. "I have to ask you something. I'm asking because I'm concerned about your happiness. Before you answer, I want you to really think about it." I paused again, letting her know that I was asking the question, not discussing it. "Is this really what you want? Specifically for him instead of me?" I nodded towards Rob. Eddie responded so sadly that it was hard not to comfort her. "I thought about this almost all the time. Yes, this is what I want." I raised my hand before she could say she was sorry again. I said that once I'm gone, it's irreversible. You can't keep jumping between us. Rob certainly made a wonderful return to your heart. He worked very hard to make this happen. I won't. I'll respect boundaries. You and your love together. Doing the opposite of how Rob disrespected ours. Also, I will not want you back. You made a choice for your happiness, despite my significant damage. Perhaps one day you will realize that I never did the same towards you. It may change your mind about who can take better care of you, but it will be too late if you let me go after all this. I won't be able to come back." "Wait!" Eddie suddenly shouted. I turned to her. Eddie pulled herself up, supporting herself with her arms outstretched. "Jim, somehow you knew you were in this mess. You knew about my infidelity for much longer than I thought. Even if you didn't know, it would happen today. Even if you didn't believe that, this would be the result." The look of self-hatred on her face at those last few words stopped my heart. I don't know how she could think, but she didn't plan for it to be so bloody. "Jim, please tell me, like the smartest person I know, that you have a contingency plan to do something, to be with someone if things go wrong with us. Please, Jim, tell me that you do not remain there without help, or compassion." The sadness with which she repeated my words earlier was terrifying. I answered honestly, "Honey, you said it yourself with an all-or-nothing heart. I understand how love works, even if I don't understand love. I thought I did. Clearly, not everything proves it." Her head bobbed back and forth, saying, "No, no, no." Rob wanted to hug her. Eddie signaled for him not to do this. "Jim, this is Rob and me together. They're for each other in the future, as you say. But we both owe it to you. We are not possible without your permission. As you said, you could kill Rob or me easily." She walked a tightrope, understanding the facts on my side while not wanting to humiliate Rob. "It seems like Rob and I are the everyone in an all-or-nothing scenario, and you get nothing. What can we do for you? I promise, and you have the same from Rob. We won't cause any problems. I will support you in whatever you need. Organ donation. Whatever." There was nothing I could have said to make her feel better about what she had done. I didn't want to, and according to her, it was no longer my job. Everything except getting my love back, right? How did you support me all these months while I helped you recover? While you were planning to leave me? I said this calmly, without anger. But the truth in the words was ugly enough in itself. She lowered her head. "You need to know that this is not entirely true today. This hell I created was a recent decision and not nearly as thoughtful as I thought. I can't believe how poorly I handled it and how across the board I was in a hurry. It seemed that once I was convinced this had to be the outcome, allowing you to live in a world that I knew I was going to destroy was another betrayal I never intended. And God is my witness. I understand every one of your objections. I am guilty of almost all of them. I don't know why they weren't obvious to me. And yes, I know how much this statement hurts you too. At least I can be honest now that I've ruined the life and dreams of the best person I've ever met." I saw Rob look at Eddie. She answered him quietly in a manner that I thought was appropriate. "Rob, you know how I feel about you," she said with a grimace. "But neither you nor I can be considered as good as Jim. He is completely innocent. We are the deceivers. We did this to him. He did you a great kindness when he probably should have killed you. We selfishly took what we wanted and moved toward a happy life together. But our happy life is built on the wreckage of what we did to our once happy life with Jim. We destroyed him to get what we wanted. We didn't intend to hurt him, but we knew the price would be our unity, and we sentenced Jim to pay for us. This perversely proves that you and I are made from the same cloth and deserve each other, if not happiness." Eddie's eyes begged Rob to understand. He seemed to understand. I had a perverse desire to add a fly in the ointment to their happy future. "So you want to do something for me? To make it up to me? What do I need now? I planned to win, to protect love, but so did you two, and you won. Amazing, Eddie. You competed with me." She forced out another sob, amazed at herself. So love has its winners and its defenders as well as its losers. I was completely involved. I was given great love. I defended it with everything I had. Well, at least with what I was allowed. I just couldn't protect my marriage and love from my own life partner, from the woman I loved. I could do it now, but I won't. I still respect the love that was given to me, no matter how much I am disgusted by the outcome. Eddie's fists shook in a perfect display of desperate bitterness. I might be bitter towards myself because my wife found me inadequate and unworthy of her love, but I didn't have to despise myself or know that I had ruined the person I loved. This will be a big burden for Eddie in the future. As nice a guy as Rob was, I couldn't imagine him being up to the task. Honestly, Eddie, I have no backup plan, no contingency plan. I have nowhere to go, nothing to do, no tomorrow. I was fully involved. How could I be anything less? To honor you or love, I never deceived you. So what do I need when I have no known future? It was never possible to lose. I turned to go pack my things, wondering why I was doing this. Maybe I should leave without anything. I could easily pick up all the necessary hygiene items. Any supplies I was going to take didn't help me save my life or save the love of my life. What good are they? What value do they have? Maybe I should leave completely. I took my phone, wallet, and keys from the table. I could come back for something else later. Eddie asked in a hoarse voice, "How will you live?" I turned to her, stuffing my modest belongings into my pockets, reminding myself that I asked for this. Eddie was shocked. "What? How could you ask for this? I told you. You didn't do anything wrong." Eddie was confused and angry that I felt this was somehow my fault. She wanted to protect me. It was too late for that, I thought. I tried to smile while explaining. No, I love you. I didn't want to lose you, but that doesn't change the fact that the matter was decided against me. It's the sober realization that it was decided before I even had a chance to fight. I spent 2 years making one last desperate push, only to discover that it was a foregone conclusion, probably those 2 years ago. I looked up, shaking my head. I should have held on a little longer, I thought. Well, you've taken everything from me. Can you let me walk away with a little dignity? Can you scratch the bottom of the barrel for this? If not, I understand. It's beyond our agreement, but it hardly seems an unreasonable request in these circumstances. After my prayer, I cleared my mind to talk to Eddie again. Eddie, here's the how and the why. Even in those months when I knew about Rob before the accident, I wanted more. I wanted you to love me, for you to choose me, and for us to have what we once had. I was ready to swallow my pride to have it. I was ready to turn a blind eye to your betrayal. But then the accident, and you were still in a coma, in a state of neither life nor death. You had nothing in this state, and I could not have what I so fiercely craved. You. I was so desperate that, having tried everything I knew for your sake, I began to try what I did not know. It came to me like a bolt of lightning. In my desperation, I asked God if I could make a deal with him. I wanted more. I wanted you. But even if the price was losing you and your love for Rob, I would pay this price if he would just let you live again. I held back tears as they filled my eyes. So, good deal for you. I had to pause to maintain my composure. How can I complain? The Almighty gave me what I asked for, right? I coughed a little. So, Rob, make the best of it. Because, as I've always thought, Eddie truly is a gift from God. Rob just stood there with his mouth open. Eddie started to cry and wanted to hug him, but thinking about me, she pulled away from him. Eddie knew me. I wasn't prone to hyperbole. I truly believed what I told them. She fought back most of her tears and stood up, trembling as she stood up. Eddie walked away from Rob, knowing my last memory of her shouldn't be with another man. She bowed to me with respect. I nodded and turned to leave without looking back. My time was up. I lost. Call me what you want. I didn't harm her or Rob. Maybe they'll punish themselves. I have no desire to do that. Even though I'm no longer responsible for protecting my wife, I still want to. Damn it, I still loved her. It's a happy ending just for them. And not entirely happy, even for them, with Eddie's guilt and the reactions from friends and family. I can imagine what they will face. Did I want them to suffer? Did I want Eddie to suffer? No, I wanted her to live. The heart isn't supposed to be reasonable, but wanting her to live with constant guilt or remorse isn't right. No, this is not love. I want Eddie to be happy. I want this so much that I'm willing to pay for her happiness with my own. My only regret is that my love for her will inevitably fade so I can survive without her. However, I passed an important test. As a parent releases their child into adulthood, you need to allow those you love to seek their own happiness. You have to love them enough to let them break your heart. So if you want to laugh at me for losing and not getting revenge, go ahead. However, I have a few consolations. One turned out to be unhelpful, but a complete offer of love and support to my wife. The result doesn't seem like much of a consolation, does it? This is it. When you lose the most important thing, the craziest thing is the possibility that there was or could be something else you could try. All those could become shoulds against the backdrop of lost love. The fact that I gave everything makes me look stupid and weak, even ridiculous to some. But I really gave everything. It just wasn't enough. Or maybe it was enough, but Eddie just didn't want it from me. In the end, there was nothing I could do about it. There was no mitigation of my defeat. I was defeated as if I were an abusive and harmful husband from whom Eddie needed to be saved. There was no next chapter, no reconciliation, no turning back. But that's the point. I lost completely. Nothing I tried worked. The battle was over before I knew I was in it. Everyone, including Eddie, thinks this is the most unfair thing they've ever seen. My struggle was a complete failure, a complete futility. Think about it. If I'm doomed to be single for the rest of my life, then thank God I don't have what-ifs to keep me up at night. I really did my best. As Eddie said, it wasn't fair, and it wasn't right. But that's how it was. I was defeated. I won't be able to survive this, so I just have to cope. I just need to get used to it. But I don't need to ever look back or be haunted by the question of what else I could have tried or how things could have been. So that night, I turned around, put my hands in my pockets, and walked away. I brought my wife back to life, and for that, I lost everything I loved. Now I had to pay. I honor my agreements. Time to find some positive way to live the rest of my days. Find some motivation to get up every morning while continuing to pray for freedom from my life sentence every night. So what if I could do it all over again? Wanting Eddie to choose me. I set off on a doomed course. The only change I could make was to kill Rob without letting Eddie know that I knew anything about him or her affair. I don't believe it would have made her love him any less. Although I don't think her love for me would have suffered as much. However, I think it would make her crave him for the rest of her life. I think she's craving me now. Who cares? She's still with him and I'm alone. Would I take her back if she suddenly came to her senses? That's a good question. I was serious when I left. She did not show me any attention, approaching love in her last hour with me. She only felt guilty about me. It's clear to me that I still loved her. No, I wouldn't take her back. I respect love too much to make that mistake. Love makes demands on us sometimes, but it should not make us puppets. This is not real love. No. Eddie had her chance. She made her choice. But what about going back in time, meeting her and falling in love? Would I do it again? This is where you laugh in my face for many wonderful years. Eddie truly loved me, and as you saw, I loved her completely. Would I like to go back and try loving her in measured tones? Treating love like a rental? No. So would I love her completely? Yes, I should have. And I would try again to make her feel what I felt even with my outcome. Love is a matter of value, not a cost-benefit analysis. The value far exceeds any possible cost. You must choose a worthy partner, despite what the end of my story tells you. For many years, Eddie was the best possible partner. I mistakenly thought that before death and beyond. On the other hand, I admitted that I did not understand love as much as I thought. But there are few things I wouldn't do, including killing poor Rob, even if it cost me my own life for a chance at true love. Death is a deal if it goes to protect love in the end. I burned my life trying to protect something that no longer existed. An ironic twist on being blinded by love, if ever there was one. You see, the saddest possibility for love is not to lose it. It's never to find it. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.